Now we have to deliver. Enough all talk, no action. We've issued executive orders to build the Keystone and Dakota pipelines. We've issued executive orders to remove wasteful regulations. We've put in place the first steps in our immigration plan, ordering the immediate construction of the border wall, and I mean the immediate removal of criminal aliens. And finally, at long last, cracking down on sanctuary cities.
That was President Trump speaking at the Republican retreat in Philadelphia today on the barrage of executive orders in his first week in office. Are all these executive actions fulfilling the campaign promises of candidate Trump, or are some largely symbolic? And whatever became of the conservative philosophical opposition to governance by executive order? Let's bring in our panel. Fox News senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano, Katie Pavlich, news editor at townhall.com, and A.B. Stoddard, associate editor at Real Clear Politics. Dear friends all. We will begin with the noted libertarian on this set, and also the only person on this set, to my knowledge, who's on a first-name basis with the President of the United States.
Oh, another story for another time.
Judge, are you troubled by all these executive orders?
I am not troubled by the executive orders that I have seen. The executive orders on immigration policy are within the authority that's given to him under federal law. The executive order on Obamacare is very creative and is very functional and practical, basically saying to the IRS, do not collect a tax from people who do not have health care, because by the time the tax is owed on April 15th, you won't have that authority to collect it, because they won't have the obligation to have it, because Obamacare will be different. So the short answer is these are consistent with his promises as candidate Trump. The longer answer is they are within, whether you think he should have that authority or not, they are within the authority of the presidency.
There was a time during the last administration when leading conservatives did complain about President Obama's use of executive orders. Let's listen to the House Speaker, Paul Ryan.
We're going to wait and see from the administration what their supplemental looks like. I'm not going to get ahead of a policy and a bill that has not been written yet. But the point is we are going to finance the Secure Fence Act, which is the construction of the physical barrier on the border. We are fiscal conservatives. If we're going to be spending on things like, say, infrastructure, we're going to find the fiscal space to pay for that in our spring budget.
All right, that really had more to do with the financing of various measures, including the proposed border wall. A.B. Stoddard, do we see the Republican Party maintaining its usual preoccupation with offsets, that is, making sure that anything new you want to spend doesn't come at the expense, or something else has to be cut, in other words, from the budget in order to fund that? Do we see that consistency here?
No, not yet. The border wall made them a little visibly uncomfortable to the talk about the cost. They actually estimated it a little bit higher at 12 to 15 billion. They didn't want to talk about Mexico paying for it. They just wanted to say that they were going to try to find supplemental funding through existing law from 2006 and not insert it into this year's budget, which would cause a huge eruption and a political problem where they just want to build some momentum, look unified, and get going. But it is true that they're underneath the surface is tension boiling up about the fact that Donald Trump is a big spender. Increased military spending, a deep tax cut, a wall, expensive infrastructure projects are all expenditures, and none of them are pay-fors. And they haven't come with pay-fors. So that will be a discussion going forward. And it seems that today not a lot of answers came out of the question.
You say pay-fors, I used offsets. These are arcane technical terms, but they basically mean the same thing.
Some money, basically.
One of the groups here in Washington that is usually most concerned with making sure that new initiatives are, as they say, budget neutral is the House Freedom Caucus, conservatives within the House GOP ranks. And here is a prominent member of the Freedom Caucus on just this issue.
I've been working with my staff today on finding ways to offset some of those dollars. Now that we have a dollar amount, when we have a $1 trillion budget, I would hope that we could find $15 billion over 10 years.
Katie Pavlich, how important is this whole question of funding the wall? Originally it was going to be Mexico's going to pay for it. Now it's Mexico's going to reimburse us for it. Now we may have, that may be complicated. How important is the funding?
First of all, I think Americans need to start accepting that if they want a border on their or a wall on their southern border, they are going to ultimately be the ones not only just to pay for it initially, but to also maintain it and staff it. But in terms of paying for the wall and finding these loopholes in the budget, so to speak, Republicans are in a place, especially the Freedom Caucus Republicans, where they're going to blow their own credibility that they've tried to gain over the years of the Tea Party movement during the Obama administration and at the back end of the Bush administration for paying for things and not deficit spending and not increasing the federal debt. And so they're in a bind here when it comes to paying for one of Trump's projects, not even the list of other things that he's put on the table.
Such as infrastructure as well. You raised the excellent point about staffing the border wall. One of these executive orders that the president issued in the past few days increased the number of Border Patrol agents by about 5,000, I believe. From your own experience writing about these issues, should that be sufficient in terms of staffing?
It's going to be difficult. I mean, the border is very vast and long. I think that's going to take maybe double the amount of Border Patrol agents and 5,000 to actually get the job done for what they want to do. There are parts of the border where the fence has certainly worked and kept drugs and human trafficking to a minimum. Yuma, Arizona, and San Diego are two examples of that. But if you're going to have a real serious bolstering of a wall that people can, in fact, in some places jump over, you're going to have to staff up Border Patrol. And the other big part of this is that the wall is not the end-all be-all. I think a lot of people acknowledge that when you ask them in polling what they think is important in terms of immigration enforcement. It's really the people who are here and the criminal element that the president talked about that is our problem area. And visa overstays are a huge part of why we have an illegal immigration problem in this country.
Judge Napolitano, I want to ask you about something that appeared in the New York Times today, written by my colleague and friend Peter Baker, who covers the White House. The article is entitled "An Itchy Twitter Finger in the Oval Office." And Mr. Baker writes, he sits in the White House at night watching television or reading social media, and through Twitter issues instant judgments on what he sees. He channels fringe ideas and gives them as much weight as carefully researched reports. He denigrates the conclusions of intelligence professionals and then later denies having done so. He thrives on conflict and chaos. And it goes on from there. Is that true?
If it is true, I would have added the following phrase, and he loves every minute of it, because this is the way Donald Trump is going to govern. He's going to bypass the media whenever he can. He's going to pinprick media with which he disagrees, and he's going to make announcements that used to be made with great fanfare about 2 o'clock in the morning to see who's listening.
All right, we'll be back with the panel just in a moment, but next up, will President Trump bring back the kinds of harsh interrogation techniques that critics call torture? Stay with us.
I would bring back waterboarding, and I'd bring back a hell of a lot worse than waterboarding. Don't tell me it doesn't work. Torture works. I like it a lot, and I don't think it's tough enough. General Mattis is a strong, highly dignified man. I said, what do you think of waterboarding? He said, I've never found it to be useful. He said, I've always found, give me a pack of cigarettes and a couple of beers, and I do better with that than I do with torture.
If you were ordered by the president to restart the CIA's use of enhanced interrogation techniques that fall outside of the Army Field Manual, would you comply?
Absolutely not.
I will rely on Pompeo and Mattis and my group. And if they don't want to do, that's fine. If they do want to do, then I will work toward that end. Do I think it works? Absolutely.
There you saw how President Trump has evolved on the subject of the harsh interrogation techniques, which critics call torture, over the last 12 months, with input from the new Secretary of Defense and CIA Director. Back to our panel now. A.B. Stoddard, it seems to me that the President has more or less abandoned this idea for now, but he still gets credit with certain segments of his base and the electorate for talking tough on the issue, while he defers to the seasoned counsel of the Defense Secretary and the CIA Director. Is that your read?
Well, actually, they've created a dust storm with a document that Sean Spicer's trying to sort of wiggle around about black sites and the use of these enhanced interrogation techniques. So he didn't just go to an interview, talk tough on torture, and then say, but of course it's illegal and we won't be using it. In the end, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He told David Weir that he is going to let Pompeo and Mattis set policy and do what is legal. That's a bottom line. But at the same time, when you have a document circulating about opening up black sites and actually using these kinds of things, and then you have a dodgy answer from the press secretary, Sean was very careful to repeat several times, it was not a White House document. I can't say it more clearly. This is not a White House document, which means it's could be an agency document within the executive branch. So it creates confusion. What I don't like about it is it was a dust-up that didn't need to happen when this Secretary of Defense is starting his job and the head of the CIA. Mattis and Pompeo don't need this. Don't do it to them. They were blindsided by the document, blindsided by this announcement and this talk about torture, and it took them by surprise. This is just bad management. It shouldn't happen to them in their first days in the office.
Katie.
Well, I think it's, Donald Trump gets some credit when he talks about these things working, right? He's going a little further than saying it's just enhanced interrogation. He is using the term torture, which I don't think the CIA would prefer that he uses. But there was a Wall Street Journal op-ed in 2014 that was penned by a number of former CIA directors and deputy directors talking about the results that they got of the enhanced interrogation program at the CIA, talking about al-Qaeda operatives who were taken out, KSM, who was in the middle of plotting a number of mass casualty attacks that were interrupted as a result of their findings. And so it's understandable that he wants to get results that he thinks that he's seen through the words of our former CIA directors. That being said, it is now illegal. It was passed through Congress that we cannot do this. It is considered torture. John McCain said today, no matter what the president does in terms of signing an executive order, things are not going to change. And quite frankly, this is a program that has been under scrutiny since 2006 when the Supreme Court ruled that the Geneva Convention also applies to not just prisoners of war, but anybody who the U.S. detains. And therefore, this program has been under scrutiny. And quite frankly, the CIA has probably moved on in trying to change their techniques for a decade to make sure they can prevent future attacks without the enhanced interrogation program.
And here I thought it would be the judge who'd be most likely to invoke court precedent on the panel tonight.
To impress him.
It's a tough business. We do have the point that Katie made that a number of former directors of CIA have endorsed these techniques, whatever label one places on them. In fact, President Trump over the past few days has been very critical of the outgoing CIA director, John Brennan, accusing him of leaking, likening those tactics to those employed by the Nazi leadership in World War II. But here would appear to be one area on which Donald Trump and John Brennan find common ground. Here is John Brennan.
It is our considered view that the detainees who were subjected to enhanced interrogation techniques provided information that was useful and was used in the ultimate operation to go against bin Laden.
So not only is he saying that these techniques work, they helped lead us to one of the great triumphs in the war on terror, the killing of Osama bin Laden. Judge, your verdict.
I recognize the greatness of that triumph, but it certainly can't outweigh the treaties that we have signed. Why do we sign treaties? There are 4 of them that we've signed that prohibit torture. Why do we enact statutes that prohibit torture? Why do we expose the people who order it and the people who perpetrate it to becoming war criminals and prosecuted in other countries where the president's commutation and pardon power is useless? Why do we undermine the very values of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution? Why did we demean our moral superiority, which upholds the inalienable rights of persons?
Because war is hell?
War is hell, but war must be fought by rules. Why do we have these rules if we're not going to abide by them?
So there are rules in hell.
Well, you have to ask Dante. But George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, FDR, LBJ, all prohibited the types of techniques that Donald Trump is now talking about, or this mysterious memo is alluding to, that he might be considering reinstating. Whether they work or not, they violate the most basic aspects of Americanism.
On that memo, Mr. Spicer said from the podium yesterday that it was not a White House document. The New York Times says 3 administration officials told them that was false. Perhaps we'll see that hashed out further. We have 20 seconds, AB. The politics of this going forward, will this continue to be an issue?
I think they need to try to put it to bed. If Donald Trump keeps giving interviews, which he's doing a lot this week, and talking about torture and making members of Congress talk about it, it's just going to be another political fight that makes them look divided.
Thank you all so much. That's it for the panel, but stay tuned to learn what was really said at last week's inauguration. Finally tonight, have you ever wondered what's really said amid all the pomp and circumstance at the inauguration? Well, here is one interpretation of it.
I'm important. Well, you want to be me, don't you?
Are you wearing a big boy shirt?
Yeah, I probably never will again. Help. I'm gonna barf. You ever washed that wig?
You got me again, George.
Yeah.
Good one.
That is a zinger. Now pretend I like you, but I hate you inside.
You're a creep.
I think you're old like dirt.
That's what they mean by heightened scrutiny. That's it from Washington. Thanks for watching Special Report. Don't forget to tune in tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Time for Hannity's interview with President Trump. I'm James Rosen. Brett Baer is back in the chair tomorrow night. The first 100 days with Martha McCallum is up next.